Honorable keynote speakers Dr. Debojyoti Biswas, Honorable resource persons of the day Dr. Tipuni Das and Dr. Sultan Ali Ahmed, Honorable Principal Sir Dr. Bhushan Chandra Pathak of BH College, Howli, members of the organizing committee of the seminar, respected faculty members present here, my dear students and esteemed participants. Good morning and welcome, dear all. We are extremely grateful to all of you present here, ready to give us your valuable time. I apologize for the delay in the commencement of this program. As we embark on our first session of the two-day National Seminar on Society and Transformation, Contemplation on the Epoch-Making Events in the Journey of Mankind, we begin with the first event of the day, that is lighting of the lamp. I request Principal Sir to please come up and light the lamp. We seek blessings for the successful execution of the program. Therefore, may I call upon Chandasmita Das, Assistant Professor, Department of Assamese, to perform a Borgit. Namaskar. मी গাবলৈ ওলা বৰগীতটো শ্ৰী শ্ৰী শংকৰদেৱ বিৰচিত ৰাগ শ্ৰী আৰু তাল একটা সুৰূপালে কি গতি কৰিলে গোবিন্দে কি মতি দিলে গোপালে কি গতি কৰিলে গোবিন্দে কি মতি দিলে হে নাথ বিফলে বয়স হব গেলি ৰে গোবিন্দে কি মতি দিলে ভৱগহন বল হাতী মোহ পাখে চন্ন তাতে হালো হৰিণ বেদাই খান্দিলো মায়াৰ পাখে
কালো ব্যাধে ধায়াহে কাম ক্রোধ কুটাখে দিখাই এ গোবিন্দে কি মতি দিলে হরাইল চেতন হৰি নজানো কি মতে তৰি গুণিতে দগধ হৈল লোভ মোহ দুহ বাঘ হততে নচাৰে লাগ রাখো রাখো এ সদাহিব এ গোবিন্দে কি মতি দিলে পলাই তেনে দেখো সন্ধি দিনে দিনে গৃহ বন্দী ভৈল মন্দ মনৰ যুগুতি তুৱা হৰিলা গগুৰ মোৰো মায়া পাখচুৰ শংকৰ কৰয় কাকুতি হে গোবিন্দে কি মতি দিলে গোপালে কি গতি কৰিলে গোবিন্দে কি মতি দিলে কি মতি দিলে কি মতি দিলে ধন্যবাদ
Thank you, dear Chandasmita, for this wonderful Borgit. We move towards the next agenda of our program, that is taking of the chairs. May I call upon Dr. Bhushan Chandra Pathak, Honorable Principal, BH College, Harley, to take his seat on the dais. Sir, please come. May I call upon our Honorable Keynote Speaker, Dr. Dibajyoti Biswas, Associate Professor, Department of English, Bodoland University, to come and take his seat on his dais. May I request... May I request Dr. Tipani Das, Associate Professor, Department of English, BH College, Harley, and also the chairperson of one of our technical session, to come up and take his seat on the dais. May I request now Dr. Robinjyoti Khaturia sir to come up on the dais and take his seat. Sir is Associate Professor in Department of Economics, PH College, Howley, and is also the coordinator of IQAC. May I call upon Dr. Sultan Ali Ahmed, Department of English, BH College, Howley, and also the resource person of one of our sessions, to come up on the dais and take his seat. I'm extremely sorry, I forgot this. May I request Dr. Devabrat Datta, sir, Department of Bengali, BH College, Howley, to come up and take his seat on the dais. Sir, please come. Sir is the President of Forum for Humanities and Social Sciences. Now we move towards the next agenda of our schedule today, that is felicitation of the respected delegates. Principal sir, I request Hunjali Katharpi to come and felicitate our respected principal sir with a fulam gamusa. I now request Titiksha Das to felicitate our honorable keynote speaker with a fulam gamusa. And as a token of love, we would like to offer him a horai and a small gift. I now request Binita Saha to felicitate Dr. Devobrat Datta sir with a fulam gamusa. May I now request Dr. Rita Saikia to felicitate Diponi Das sir with a fulam gamusa. I request Binita Saha to felicitate Dr. Robinjyoti Khatunia sir with a fulam gamusa. I now request Binita Saha to felicitate Dr. Sultan Ali Ahmed with a fulam gamusa. I would also take this opportunity to felicitate our reporters for both the sessions, Hunjali Katharpi and Vidisha Dwara, both assistant professor of Department of English PH College with fulam gamusa. Welcome address, sir. Welcome address, sir. Next, we move towards the welcome address of this inaugural session. Welcome address would be given by respected principal, sir. Sir, please.
Dipankar, agole ha? Agole, tumi agole ha? Tumalok agole ha? Basumatari agole ha? Basumatari agota ko. Honorable keynote speaker, Dr. Devojyoti Biswas, Honorable resource persons of the day, Dr. Diponi Das and Dr. Sultan Ali Ahmed, respected Dr. Sir Khatonier, member of the organizing committee of the seminar, respected faculty members and esteemed participants of today's seminar. A very good morning to everybody. It gives me immense pleasure in welcoming you all to the two-day national seminar on Society and Transformation, Contemplation of the Epoch-Making Events in the Journey of Mankind, organized by Society for Humanities and Social Sciences, BH College, in collaboration with IQAC BH College. As a part of academic society, it has always been a humble endeavor of the institution to disseminate quality education to the students, inculcate in them the light of knowledge and goodwill, while at the same time furnish fertile ground for critical thinking in various domains of scholarship. With this perspective in mind, the Society for Humanities and Social Sciences has organized this 2 day national seminar. The goal of this seminar is to make an assessment on the progressive epoch-making transitions witnessed by civilizations in various dimensions of human life and how the society has evolved over time to experience better condition of being. However, it should also be mentioned that certain changes were also detrimental to the living conditions of the people. I feel very privileged to welcome Dr. Devajyoti Biswas, Associate Professor, Department of English, Bodoland University, an academician with volumes of articles and writer in prestigious journals and books to his credit. It gives me immense pleasure to mention that Dr. Devajyoti Biswas is an alumni of Department of English, BH College, and we feel very proud of his achievements. On behalf of this institution and organizing committee of the seminar, I also welcome each and every one of you present here. I strongly believe all the participants shall be enriched with this academic discussion. With these few words, I want to conclude my lecture. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your welcome speech. May I now call upon our Honorable IQAC Coordinator, Dr. Robinjyoti Khatuniar, sir, to speak a few words.
Good morning, one and all present here. Honorable Principal, sir, our esteemed invitees and keynote speaker of this national seminar, Dr. Biswas, sir. Honorable Dr. Sir, Dipani Das, sir, my friend, Dr. Sultan Ali Ahmed, respected teachers, participants of this program, and all my dear students. This is indeed a great pleasure for all of us that under the leadership of the Society of Humanities and Social Science of our institutions, we are going to realize this 2 days long program in the name of this national seminar on society and transformation. I think by means of observing the way they have organized this occasion, one can see the beautiful example of society and transformation. You can see the young ladies around, right from the very conceptualization of this program to the execution of the program. Everywhere, they are showing their talent, their expertise, knowledge, and everything in the name of organizing this event. I think we must appreciate this section of our society, particularly I am talking about the women class, without which we cannot think of society, and nothing will be worth mentioning about transformation without this section. So the way you are doing, the way you are organizing the event, this is the best example of how a society can transform. Whenever we talk about society or we think about ourselves, we basically think of, imagine in our mind, a patriarchal society where females were mostly loaded by domestic work and other things. But nowadays, we can see in every field, these women, they are leading our society just like anything, and everywhere, maybe in governance, maybe in other fields, science, humanities, every field, we can find numbers of leaders from that particular segment. So I'm very much thankful to the workers, the organizers, volunteers of the society for doing everything in the name of organizing this event. And I hope that within these 2 days, we'll have a very academic and fruitful discussion about how our society has transformed, and we'll be having a very fantastic time ahead. Once again, I congratulate the societies for humanities and social science, all the members, including the IQAC members. Thank you very much. And we'll expecting a good feedback, particularly from the participants. I don't know how many participants are there. Even we'll be having session in the online mode as well. So I hope that you will participate everywhere, and this will be a kind of very good and interactive kind of session. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Robinjyoti Khatunia sir, for such encouraging and inspiring words. Actually, sir has always been with us in this program, in executing and in formulating the ideas and all. He also helps us a lot to run the technical sessions and other things. Next, may I call upon Dr. Debabrata Datta sir. Sir is President of Society for Humanities and Social Science. I call upon sir to say a few words.
माननीय अध्यक्ष महोदय, आज दुदिनिया सेमिनार प्रथम दिन कार्यसूची मध्यमणि देवज्योति विश्वास डांगरिया, मंचत उपविष्ट आईपीसी कोऑर्डिनेटर डॉक्टर रविंद्रज्योति खाटुनिया, डॉक्टर दीपमणि दास, एचओडी इंग्लिश, डॉक्टर सुल्तान अली अहमेद, एसोसिएट प्रोफेसर डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ इंग्लिश, আমার ফোরামর সমূহ সদস্য উপস্থিত পার্টিসিপেন্টস আর ছাত্রছাত্রী, আমি নথৈ আনন্দিত যে আমার কিনোট অ্যাড্রেস পরিবেশনকারী আমারই কলেজের প্রাক্তন ছাত্র। আমি গর্বিত দেবজ্যোতি আমার মাজত আহিছে। তেখেতৰ সমল ব্যক্তিত্বৰ জৰিয়তে আজিৰ এই আলোচনা চক্ৰ গধুৰ কৰি তুলিব। সমাজ পরিবর্তনশীল, বিবর্তনশীল। এই বিবর্তন আমি হিউমেনিটিজৰ প্ৰতিটো বিভাগৰ লক্ষ্য কৰো। বিশেষকৈ আমাৰ সাহিত্যত বিবৰ্তন গতিশীলতাৰে আগুৱাই গৈছে। ডক্টৰ ৰবীন্দ্ৰজ্যোতি খাটনিয়াৰৰ বক্তৃতাৰ সূত্ৰ ধৰি ময়ো ক'ব বিচাৰিছো যে নাৰী শক্তি আজিৰ দিনতে সমগ্ৰ বিশ্বতে এক অভাৱনীয় পৰিৱৰ্তন আৰু গতিশীলতাৰে তেওঁলোকৰ যিখিনি ব্যক্তিত্ব, নাৰী ব্যক্তিত্বৰ যিখিনি কিৰণ, সেই কিৰণেৰে বিশ্বখন উজ্বলাই তুলিছে। আৰু আজিৰ সেমিনাৰত বিভিন্ন পেপাৰ প্ৰেজেণ্টাৰ বিলাকে এই বিবৰ্তনক কেনেকে লক্ষ্য কৰিছে সেইখিনি আমি গম পাম। আৰু দীঘলীয়া নকৰো, আমি আমাৰ ফোৰামৰ তৰফৰ পৰা আটাইলৈ শুভেচ্ছা যাচি মোৰ চমু বক্তব্য ইয়াতে সামৰিলোঁ ধন্যবাদ
Thank you, Dr. Devabrat Datta, sir, for your kind words. Now we move towards the core event of our program, that is the keynote address by Dr. Debajyoti Biswas, sir, Associate Professor, Department of English, Borland University. An academician who has prolific contribution in the fields of scholarship. Sir has also volumes of scholarly articles in reputed journals in the field of English literature and humanities at large. His writings also include book reviews, edited books and books to his credit, Global Perspective on Nationalism, Political and Literary Discourse, Routledge, London, recent one. May I call upon Sir to start with his keynote address. Sir, please.
এইটো আছে নে মোৰ প্ৰেজেন্টেশ্যন
Oh, that is it. That I'm in YouTube live stream কৰি আছো
ইয়াৰ পৰা চেঞ্জ কৰিব নোৱাৰি অ'কে
ইয়াৰ connection to এইটো মোৰটোৰ লগত
ইয়াতে ইণ্টাৰনেট আছে
ইয়াত ইণ্টাৰনেট আছে
এইটো বন্ধ হৈ যাব কিন্তু মানে there is no battery
আপনি তাত ল'ব নেকি আপোনাৰ লেপটপত ল'ব নেকি
মোৰ লেপটপ তাতে আছে
এইটো আপোনাৰ লেপটপ নেকি আচ্ছা হেভি কৰিম বক্সটো চেঞ্জ কৰি দিম এইটো অঁতৰাই দিয়া নেকি লাইভ হৈ আছে কোলাত দি দিলোঁ আপোনাৰ চাইডত দি দিলোঁ পাব পাৰে ইফালে দিম এইটো কি হয়
সুইচ অফ হৈ গ'ল
তুমি আৰু সুইচটো অফ কৰি দিলা
মোৰটো বেটাৰীটো প্ৰব্লেম আছে
এতিয়া হৈছে
এতিয়া হৈছে অফ কৰি হৈ যাব স্যার নো প্রবলেম ঠিক হয়ে গেছে Thank you. I want to no problem. पक्के start তুমি এটা একটু পেন ড্রাইভত সেভ কৰি দিছা ডাউনলোড আছে ওই অলপ টিপু তুমি পাবা
আপুনি আগত ক'ত কাম কৰিছিলে
মই হোজাই কলেজ
হোজাই কলেজত ঠিক আছে আপোনাক জেট লগ পাইছিলে নেকি চাইনে কৰিছিলে বোধ আমাৰ ফেলোশ্বিপ ডিপাৰ্টমেণ্ট মোক ক'লে যে মইতো নাজানো
চাইন
চাইন্স
বুজি নাপাওঁ
আপোনাক চিনি পাই মোক সুধিছিলে যে তেখেতে হোজাইত কাম কৰিছিলে নেকি হয় ছাৰ
might take some time but
মই পিছত I'll take it later পিছত লৈ
হৈ গৈছে ক'ত থৈছিলা
মানুহখিনি খাবলৈ গ'ল বাহিৰত
নহ'ব নিজে হ'ব হৈ যাব নো প্ৰব্লেম
বিমলি ছাৰ
এইটোত নাই জানো জলদি কৰিলে আকৌ হেং মাৰি যাব এতিয়া কিয় দিলে বাৰু মানুহবিলাকে খানাটো কোনে দিবলৈ গ'লে চিষ্টেমটো ছাৰে কওঁতে খানাটো কোনে দিবলৈ গ'লে এইটো হকটো ছাৰে ক'লে তুমি এইটো ন ছাৰ এতিয়া আৰু লাঞ্চ ব্ৰেকফাষ্ট কৰি দিলে আপোনাৰ টেনশ্যনটো তাহাঁতি ছাৰ হোৱাট ইজ হি And right to this belongs to no.
Hello, I'll do it. Yeah. Start কৰিম নে or should we wait for the teachers to come back? কি সময় ৰৈ দিও নেকি স্যাৰ? Okay. All right.
So would you like to have your breakfast then by the time?
I'm not after this.
Oh, sir, you can have your breakfast.
Principals are in absentia. My teachers, my colleagues, friends, students, and participants. I'm really grateful to the organizing committee and to my teachers for inviting me here today and giving me this privilege to share my thoughts with you. I'm not an expert on anything, but I would like to share my experience and thought about the topic of this seminar, about the theme of this seminar. Without wasting time, I would like to start directly. And may I have the attention of the students, please? So whatever I'll speak, I'll try to make it meaningful for you so that you can relate things with your study and with your life. Because after all, what we study or what we read, we need to put it into practice in our day-to-day life. So I hope there will be some takeaway for you after today's talk. I have given the title of my talk as Coloniality, Modernity, and the New World Order. And I have taken the keywords from the CFP. The CFP uses these terms, society and transformation, epoch-making events in the journey of mankind, epistemological patterns, and detrimental. So while we are making transformation in the society, while we are progressing, there is also something which is detrimental. And the keywords which have been used in the conference, in the seminar, are Renaissance humanism. The sub-themes which have been used, they are the Renaissance humanism, epistemology, colonialism, modernity, environment, and detrimental effects. So, clubbing all these ideas together is really a problematic thing. So we will start this with a question to ourselves. The question is, while it is possible to talk and deliberate on visible transformations in society, is it possible to talk about the journey of mankind? Khatunia sir was telling about the transformation which is visible in the society today, about women participating in our day-to-day activities. They have come out from the narrow confines of their domestic affair, and they are participating in society in various fronts. But can we really talk about the journey of mankind? Is it really possible? Will such a discourse of mankind not be the promotion of a hegemonic high culture of a few that is often foregrounded as a metonymic concession for mankind? By this I mean that those who have some knowledge, I'm talking about the students, if you know about what is hegemonic discourse, how the ideas of a selected few are always foregrounded as general ideas for all, and we are made to accept those ideas. That discourse is called hegemonic discourse. So why I'm saying this? Because the kind of social transformation that we have witnessed in this society, in Europe, in the United States, and in all the colonies, the erstwhile colonies, like India, we see that there was a social structure which was situated during the colonial times. And that social structure was formulated by the white, heterogenic, male individuals who are from Europe. So while we do that, are we talking about the progress and development of entire mankind, or are we talking about the progress and development initiated by a group of people who were dominant at that time, who were rich, who were powerful, who had access to the church, who had access to the throne, the rising bourgeois who took advantage of the situation, the colonizers who came here, destroyed the old structure, the old order, and set up a new structure, and we are following that structure today. So is it the progress of entire mankind, or is it the promotion of a section of people coming from the West? So this is what I'm going to talk about today. I have divided the talk into 6 parts. The first part will talk about Renaissance humanism. I have taken these ideas from the CFP. These were mentioned in the CFP, so I use them, and I divided my talk accordingly. Renaissance humanism and the social transformation. Epistemology of new world order. Now, epistemology deals with how we conceive knowledge, how knowledge is constituted, and then how it is perpetuated in the society. The building up of knowledge itself, the creation of knowledge itself, is the study of epistemology. So what we know today is it the same thing that we had known in say 2000 years back, or has our knowledge system changed? A new knowledge system has taken place in the old knowledge system. We need to identify these changes. Then how nature was constructed in that new epistemology. What ideas do we have about nature, and what ideas do we have today about nature? How colonialism and modernity are evil, that they started at the same time. You cannot think about colonialism without modernity, and you cannot think about modernity without colonialism. Today we might think that colonialism has ended. There is an end to colonialism. Yes, we have ended the political colonialism, but there is another form of colonialism which is perpetuating. It is global colonialism. So this is something which Walter Mignolo says, that if there was colonialism and modernity, then today there is global colonialism and global modernity. And how this is effectuated in today's society? This is effectuated by consent. If you are familiar with the ideas of hegemonic discourse, how we are ruled by our own consent since the 17th century. And then since I'm from literature department, I'll end the talk with certain literary texts through which we can understand the transformation. So this will be the structure of my today's talk. Renaissance humanism and social transformation from the ship of fools to confinement. Have you heard about the ship of fools? Unisara, tumaloke, have you ever heard about this phrase, ship of fools? It means a ship which is used by the fools, where the fools were transported. Where were they transported? From where did this idea of the ship of fools come? There is a text by Foucault, Madness and Civilization. If you read the text, you will get a clear idea of it. He did a research on hospital. In their tongue, they call it hospital. So in English, we call it hospital. Hospital General was a medical. It was a medical organization in Paris. So Foucault did a research on that, and then found out that there were many hospitals throughout Europe. And from there, I have derived this idea, where he talks about the ship of fools. In medieval Europe, there were plenty of leisure houses. Leisure houses are the houses where the lepers were kept. Leper. So these lepers were kept in the leisure houses, and there were plenty of them in Europe. And when these leisure houses started coming up in a big way, the lepers were segregated from the society and they were confined there. And gradually what happened during the medieval times, the number of the lepers reduced. And at one point of time, the lepers disappeared. There were no leprosy left. So what happened to these leisure houses? They remain empty. But nothing can remain empty. They had to be filled. Now, at that time, there was another incident which was taking place. In that society, they did not allow the fools, Pagol Manu, they did not allow the fools to remain within the city. What they did? They put them outside the city walls. But these fools, they would sneak in back into the city and they would create chaos. So the city mayor or whatever, whoever was in charge of the city, they decided that what we will do, we will transport these fools to the unknown places where nobody goes. And they took the help of the shipmen, the navigators. They will gather all the fools, all the madmen, they will put them on the ship and transport them to different places. This is from where the idea of the ship of fools came, that they are to be removed from the society. Why? Because they are chaotic and they were called deviant. But something changed in the 16th century. Because it is the time of Renaissance. The fools were just not seen as a nuisance in the society. The fools were retained in the society. And the people, they thought that it is their responsibility to treat them, to cure them of their disease. And these people were put in those leisure houses, which were transformed into mad houses. So these leisure houses which became empty, they were transformed into houses which will keep the fools. And we have Sebastian Brand's poem, Das Narrenschiff, which means the ship of fools. The fools are to be sent away to distant land. People started writing poems. There is this Erasmus's poem in praise of folly, where he talks about the fools, about the madman, about the vices that we have. But he castigates, he chastises the fools, and he says that we have to have a religious order, certain principle in the society. And he does not promote fools. He critiques the fools. And he says it is the duty of the church to bring social reformation. In order to satirize the church, he used the fools as a metaphor. So this was how the fools which disappeared came into visibility. And then we have this. This is the famous painting, and this is the Ship of Fools, which have been used in the painting. And then we have Shakespeare talking about the fools. We are all familiar with this. Lovers, madmen. I think the first part did not come up here. It says like, the lovers, the lunatics, and the poets are of the same imagination, all compact. The madman, they can see beyond the truth, and they can see more devils than the hell can hold. That's what the madman says. The madman is capable of seeing more devils than the hell can hold. That means the madman has access to the world where we do not have access. But it did not mean that madness was to be promoted. Madness was used as a deceit. Madness was used as a tool to fool others. The madman was not saved. And this madman was put in the correction houses. There were correction houses or this hospital general kind of institute throughout Europe. Now, why I am saying about all these things? Because this is from where the story of modernity and colonialism begins. So when these madmen were put there, it was funded by the monarch. There were also voluntary donation to run these madhouses. Because, the people who will be housed there, there was a point of time when 10% of the population in Paris were put there. There was also a time when 30,000 people out of 1 lakh was put there. But it needs management. How do you manage such a house? It needs fund. From where do you get the fund? The monarch will give the fund, and there will be voluntary donation. Who gives the donation? The rich people, not the poor ones. And when they give the donation, they need to have such earning and revenue. So the taxes were hiked, and that also created problem. And there was a point in time when all the places, all the regions, they were forced by the monarch to have such kind of madhouses or such kind of corrective houses. And if you are not opening such kind of corrective houses, then you will have to pay a fine. The person who was in charge of that region will have to pay a fine if he or she does not have a corrective house within his jurisdiction. And these houses were filled. Why it is important? Because it is not only the house which housed the madman, there were other people who were also forced to live. And from there, the deviant was constructed, the construction of the deviant. If you are rich and you are not working, then you will be considered deviant. Your father is rich and you are not working because your father is rich. You will be considered deviant. You are fighting with your wife, you are deviant. You are fighting against somebody, you are deviant. You have physical deformity, you cannot work, you are deviant. So all kind of people which did not fit into the description of normalcy were considered deviant. And they were all forced to live within these houses. What to do with these houses now? And it was also the time when the bourgeois class was coming up. So what they did, they transformed these houses into workhouses. And these deviant people, the so-called deviant people, they were made to work there at 1/4 of the cost of the labor. So they had to work for 16 hours. Times they were forced to work and they were not given any payment. And after working for 16 hours, they were made to read the Bible because it was for their penance. It was a way of salvation because they have committed a sin. What was the sin? the sin of being ideal, the sin of being deviant. So this is where the theocentric idea comes into the society of Europe. What was the original sin of man? Disobedience. Disobedience to God. And that's why he was removed. Adam and Eve were removed from paradise. And what was said? That man, you have to live by the sweat of thy brow. You have to till the land. So you have to work. The land is in slumber. You have to work hard, and you have to till the land. And only then you can live. But these people who denied or who refused to work, they were seen as socially deviant because they are disrespectful to what God had said. They are disobedient, and that's why they need to be corrected. This was the logic which was instituted at that time, and it had a social validation. The monarch has validated that, and you cannot claim that you are to be freed. So it was also a kind of prison. These workhouses were a kind of prison. Now just imagine the loot which the colonizers had in the colonial, in the colonized places. They are taking the raw materials from Africa. They are taking raw materials from India without paying anything. They take these raw materials, they ship it to Europe. And in Europe, they put these raw materials in those workhouses where the deviant will use those raw materials to create the finished product. And they don't have to pay anything for that. So that is also absolutely free. And then it will be brought back, it will be transported to these colonized nations and sold here at a very cheap rate. So when the British, they destroyed the indigenous industries, this was also one of the factors that the Indian industries could not compete. So this kept on happening for some time. So the idea of what is deviant or what is normal was constituted because of the Renaissance knowledge. The new knowledge system was formed since the time of Renaissance. At that time, the deviant was also compared to ghost or to devil. And the image of the Grylos was used. This is the image of the Grylos. This is something which is deviant. And the devil, the madman, the deviant person, they were compared to such kind of demons. And this is how the knowledge system was built up in Europe during the time of the Enlightenment. And that's why, it is very easy for the colonizers to say that, okay, these are not full human beings. The colonized people like us, the Africans or the others, they are not full human beings. They are deviant. And that is why they are justified to correct us, to rule over us. And they did it in such a way that we also started believing it. I'll come to that next. This is what I have already said, and this is the quotation from Foucault's text, Madness and Civilization. A quasi-absolute sovereignty jurisdiction without appeal. You cannot appeal. A writ of execution against which nothing can prevail. The Hospital General is a strange power that the king establishes between the police and the court. At the limits of the law, a third order of repression. So it is a repressive power to repress the people in the society who are weak, who are vulnerable, who cannot fight back. In functioning or in its purpose, the Hospital General had nothing to do with any medical concept. You see, the name is hospital, but it has nothing to do with medical concept. It was an instance of order of the monarchical and bourgeois order being organized in France during this period. And it was also emulated in other European countries, especially in Germany and England. There were plenty of these corrective houses. And I have already said this. That was the sin. And the deviant, how the idea of the deviant was created, and how from the sheep of fools where they were made to disappear, they were brought back to confinement. And this is the beginning of the biopolitics. Biopolitics is not the termination of human life. Necropolitics is the termination of human life. Biopolitics means how you use individuals to your own advantage, how you use them as resources. So it is not the land or the natural resources which are simply used. Human are also used. They became dispensable like nature. You use them, you end them and derive profit out of it. So these confinements, this became workhouses, and it was justified that they are meant for their salvation. And it was the time which saw the rise of industrialization. So the rise of industrialization during the colonial period was only possible because human population and nature could be exploited the way they want. And nature constituted a very important part in that. Because nature was simply not seen as nature. Nature was seen as natural resources, so that we can derive from nature. And nature was constituted as different from the subject. This idea of the subject and the object and the constitution of the other was also created at that time. The subject is the one who sees the other, the object, and distances. So, if you are familiar with the term projection, there is the Freudian term called projection. What happens in projection? You do not see those qualities essentially to be your own part, and you project these qualities to be somebody else's part. So, the 7 deadly sins, which we usually talk about in Christian theology, these sins were not seen to be a part of the self. These are seen as a part of the other. And the other was thus constructed where you can, through projection, transfer and then subjugate the other. So the colonial object, the colonial subject becomes the colonial object. And they are otherized in this way, and along with nature, which is to be subjugated, are also to be exploited. There are 2 important texts which helped in building up this rationale, helped in building up this kind of thought. The Natural and Moral History of the Indies by Jesuit Father Jose de Acosta, and Francis Bacon's, you have heard about Francis Bacon, of course, the students of English literature, Novum Organum. The mutation of nature into natural resources in the West was a sign of progress and modernization, and at the same time a sign that other civilizations stagnated and were falling behind the West. On the other hand, as far as knowledge was conceived empirically as true knowledge, it became a commodity to be exported to those whose knowledge was deviant or non-modern according to Christian theology. And later on, secular philosophies and sciences. This is according to Mignolo. And this kind of idea was constituted because of the arguments placed in those 2 books. What Acosta argues is that nature is to be exploited. Nature is to be controlled. And nature is not, we are not a part of nature. The idea that nature is different from culture was instituted through that book. The binary of nature culture, that we are not part of nature. We are the other who has to control nature, who has to subjugate or dominate nature, was possible because of this book. And Francis Bacon has also said that man needs to control and exploit nature in his book. And with the help of these ideas, the 17th century society, from that time onward, they started exploiting nature for resources. And effects of colonialism and modernity. So we know that how colonialism was initiated. We know how modernity was initiated. What are its effects? Political colonialism led to modernity. Global colonialism leads to global modernity. And during this time, as I said, the human resources and nature was exploited. There had been several genocides across the world. You talk about Australia. We know how the Australian natives had been killed. They were given poison in their food, and they were killed. They were slaughtered that way. Where they could not kill, what they did, they gave clothes or blankets, infected with diseases. They gave those things to the natives. And that's how, through disease, they tried to kill. So we talk about pandemic today. But disease was used even at that time in Australia to kill people. You talk about Banda Island. It's a small island in Indonesia. And Amitabh Ghosh talks about it in his Nutsmith's Curse. That how the entire population, 90% of the population was killed in Banda Islands. None of them spared. Only a few, handful. They ran away to neighboring islands so they could survive. Otherwise, so the people who are living today in Banda Island, they are not locally from there. They are either Indians, they are either or Sri Lankans, or they are from other Asian countries. You go to America, you go to Newfoundland, everywhere where the colonizers went, they slaughtered, they enslaved and put them to use. And if they could not enslave, they slaughtered. Why? Because they wanted the land. So land, resources, and human, they were all equated, which are to be dominated. And this is through which modernity was made possible. And they are to be controlled as well. Well, here I would also like to talk about, while this colonization process was happening and modernization process was happening, there was also huge movement of people from place to place. A lot of people were, we see the context, you see the context of Northeast India. A lot of immigrants were brought to Northeast India at that time. Because these lands were described in colonial documents as wasteland. There is nothing called wasteland actually. This is something Western construct. They call tierra nullis. They use the phrase tierra nullis. That means it is an empty land. No, it belongs to nobody. Since it belongs to nobody, we have to reclaim it. And wherever they went in the official documents, they either described it as tierra nullis or as wasteland, so that it can be appropriated. And they would cut down the forest. They would take the trees from here. An estimate of which is given by Shashi Tharoor in his book Age of Darkness, Age of the Empire. Sorry. And during this time also, the idea of racism came up. We think that, racism had been always there. No, the racism, the idea of race. I'm saying these things because, we talk about the epistemology, how the knowledge system was created through these discourses, through colonial discourses. So this racism, the idea of racism was also very important at that time, how it was constituted. At first, the difference was made on the blood. That, okay, this is Jewish blood. This blood belongs to the Moor. This is a Christian blood. So if you are not a Christian, then you are to be expelled from this land. And if you, I'm talking about the Iberian Peninsula where this has happened. And I'm taking these ideas from the book on decoloniality by Walter Mignolo, where he writes about all these things in details. That it was constituted initially on the basis of blood. Okay, so you are different. You are a Jew, you are a Moor, you are a Christian. They are different bloods. Either you convert or you die. That was the principle which was adopted. Later on, this difference of blood was transferred to the epidermis, to the skin. And the color of the skin became the identifier, the marker. Okay, brown, black, yellow. Then it was transferred to the idea of race. You belong to this race. And today, the term race is not used. It is substituted by the region, but it means the same. Asian, European, white, Anglo-Saxon. So this idea of blood was transferred to the skin. This idea of the skin was transferred to race, and today it has become a regional divide. And it still persists in new ways among us. Now I'll come to the case of India. How did we change? Today, we think like, we all talk about modernity. We need to be modern. Our tribes, the northeastern tribes, they want to be modernized. And they say, oh, there is no progress, there is no development. But progress and development and modernity is only possible at the cost of exploitation. When you exploit resources, when you exploit human, only then progress and development is possible. And this is the tendency of global capitalism, and this is the trend, and why we also have a similar mindset. So our system of knowledge was replaced by the Western system of knowledge through rational discourses, through Orientalist discourses. This idea was replaced. So first of all, we know how the deviant was constructed, why it is essential to work hard, why it is essential to control nature, why it is essential to control lower form of human beings. So that idea, that knowledge system was developed in Europe, and now it is applied in the case of the colonized nations, specifically in India. How did that happen? This is the first text. Charles Grant's Observation on the State of Society among the Asiatic Subjects to Great Britain, particularly with respect to morals, and on the means of improving it. You know how he described us. This is a report which he has presented in the British Parliament, and this is available for your free access. This is available on the internet. What he writes there, I'll just read it out. Grant describes the Hindus as superstitious, destitute to a wonderful degree, and filled with dishonesty, corruption, fraud, and mutual distrust. On the other hand, he saw the Muslims as proud, sensual, sanguine, bigoted, perfidious, treacherous, and corrupted. In this tract, Grant argues that the moral bankruptcy of the Hindus has been caused by their religious faith, and he rhetorically asks, are we bound to preserve all the enormities in the Hindu system? Have we become the guardian of every monstrous principle and practice which it contains? You see, he uses the word monster. And we see how Grylos was constituted. The idea of Grylos, the devil, why it is to be sent away to the forest, why it can only live in forest, why it is to be controlled, why it is to be destroyed. This narrative was already created in Europe. And so, they didn't need anything to prove that we are monstrous through our activities. They just need to say that we are monstrous, and at once the definition of what a monster is like and what should be done to a monster comes automatically to their mind. So we are to be controlled in the same way. So the natives, the Indians, they were always described as savage, as uncivilized, which needs to be civilized. And they did that through T.B. Macaula's The Minute on Indian Education, and it was effectuated by Bentinck through the education policy. What he writes there, Macaulay says, I have no knowledge of either Sanskrit or Arabic, but I have done what I could to form a correct estimate of their value. I have read translations of the most celebrated Arabic and Sanskritic works. I have conversed both here and at home with men distinguished by their proficiency in English tongue, in Eastern tongues. I am quite ready to take the Oriental learning at the valuation of the Orientalists themselves. These Orientalists are the white man. They are studying the Oriental texts, the Arabic and Sanskrit texts, and doing mistranslations, where they talk about Rashtra. Since I work on the areas of nationalism, I'll refer to this specific instance. Rashtra is not a nation, but Rashtra has been defined by the Orientalists as empire, which is a mistranslation. So there have been numerous mistranslations. And based on those mistranslations and Orientalist discourses, T.B. Macaulay gives this verdict. I have never found one among them who would deny that a single shelf, this sentence is epical. A single shelf of a good European library was worth the whole native literature of India and Arabia. A single shelf of European library is better than the entire literature of India and Arabia. So that is how T.B. Macaulay was demeaning the ancient texts of India and Arabia. The intrinsic superiority of the Western literature is indeed fully admitted by those of the committee who support the Oriental plan of education. We must at present do our best to form a class who may be interpreters between us and the millions whom we govern, a class of persons, Indian in blood and color, but English in taste, in opinion, in morals and intellect. So why this was done? And we had a new education system where texts as such were introduced. Now, if you are familiar with the text of Gauri Vishwanathan, she has written a wonderful book. It is based on her PhD dissertation, The Masks of Conquest, where she talks about, the ideas of hegemony and dominance. She uses ideas from Terry Eagleton to say that sometimes when you cannot be ruled by political power, you are to be ruled by consent. You have to agree, okay, I need to be ruled. All the time, the British cannot use their force. They will become weak at one point in time. So how to control? It is through consent. So through logic, through debate, through Western rationality, they prove that what you have is wrong, what you have is incorrect, what you have is not rational. So give it up. And with the new education system, that was possible. And when we started the new education system, at that time, our educated people at that point in time, they were reading the Western texts. They went into the structure of the society which were available in those texts. And they were emulating that structure. So when you read the first Indian novel in English, written in English by Bankim, Raj Mohan's wife, you see, he is all praises for the person who is educated in the city. And the one who lives in the village is shown as the villain. There are problems within the text where he tries to negotiate between tradition and modernity. That is something else. But you see his mindset that someone who is educated in the city, who has modern Western education, is more refined in behavior. If you read the colonial text, what is the name of that text? The Passage to England. Who is the author of Passage to England? No. This is Passage to India is E.M. Forster, and Passage to England. Neeraj Sri Chaudhary. Neeraj Sri Chaudhary, he writes in his autobiography, the autobiography of an unknown Indian. What did he ask to his wife on the day of his wedding night? He describes the scene of wedding night, that his wife was sitting and he was talking to the wife. He asked, "Have you heard about Beethoven?" She said, "Yes." "Can you spell her name? Can you spell his name, Beethoven?" And she spelled, and after that they slept. See the mind of the Indians, how much they were intrigued by Western knowledge, Western ideas, and Western culture, and how it gradually replaced the Indian idea, Indian knowledge, and Indian culture. So we are not to be ruled by force anymore. Modernity will not persist by force anymore. It is through consent, because we see modernity as advantageous to us. And it is through rule of consent that we allow us to be modernized. We think it is very normal for us to use nature to our own advantage, because nature is resources and it is meant for human exploitation. Most of us think that way, and therefore it has persisted. Our economics surgeon nai. Otherwise, there is something called Washington Consensus. If you have heard about Washington Consensus, I'm not sure. Economics are Oh, sir. Sir, you know about Washington Consensus? There is a idea called Washington Consensus. So according to Washington Consensus, 10 points have been laid down by a British economist. Oh, I think you got a problem. I see. Now, A British economist has prescribed, and Washington DC, they have effectuated it, that you have to follow these 10 ideas if you are to be funded by World Bank, by IMF, and other organization. You need to reform yourself, and this is a kind of standardization. We know how we could become a modern nation. If you have read Partha Chatterjee, we know that how to claim a nation, we have to modernize ourselves, how we have to leave the past behind, and we have to take the idea of progress and development, and only then we can claim ourselves as a nation and remove those risks. We are turning into another Europe and America by changing our culture, and this is happening through consent, and Washington Consensus plays a very important role in that. These are some of the literary texts which you read. I suggest the students of English literature to read these texts so that you know the kind of transformation which is happening and how it is felt by novelists, by imaginative or creative writers, how they feel about it and how they portray these things in these novels. Gun Island, you all heard about Amitav Ghosh's Gun Island, where he talks about, he starts and ends. He ends the novel with Venice. Why Venice is so important? Because everything started with Venice. The entire idea of conquering India or Asian nations, Asian countries, it started with Venice. There is something called the nutmeg. He writes about this in Nutmeg's Curse as well. Nutmeg, jana na ki? You know what is nutmeg? Jaifal. Jaifal. We use it in biryani. So this nutmeg, it was only available in Banda Island. Why? Because there was a volcanic eruption, and out of that volcanic eruption, that tree was formed later on, and it is not to be found elsewhere except Banda Island. And Venice had the control over that. Venice had an agreement with the people of Banda Island, and they would take it and export it to the rest of the world in Europe. And it was such a coveted item that one piece of nutmeg will cost you fortune. You can buy, several buildings. It would cost so much. Today it's very cheap, but at that point in time, it was very expensive. You can buy car by just having one. I'm just giving an example. Cars were not available at that time. It was very expensive. It was an exotic item, and there were so many myths associated with that. So Venice was controlling that. But the Dutch company, they wanted control of it. They came to the people in Banda Island and said that, okay, you have the term and agreement with us, you supply it to us. The people said, no, we already have an agreement with the Venetians. We'll give it to them. So at night, they came and they just killed the people. They enslaved them. And they also brought with them the Japanese. The Japanese were the ones who slaughtered these people in Banda Island. Japanese was an imperial force at that time. The samurais, they were used to kill others. And this Banda Island and the surrounding places, they were all destroyed. And only one place had these trees at that point. And the entire trade went to the Dutch company. So to break the monopoly of Venice, the Dutch company entered. So it was always loot and arson which has attracted the colonizers to look towards the east as a resource. So we have been used as a resource always. And Gun Island talks about that. So the novel talks about Venice there, why we again need to revisit Venice. It all started with that. Budhini is a novel it's a novel by Sarah Joseph. It talks about how dams, these big dams, it affects the lives of the forest dwellers, of the Adivasi communities. The last wave, it talks about the tribes who live in Andaman and Nicobar Island, how their lives are affected. We go for human safari. We don't treat these people, the tribes living there, as human beings. We see them as animals. So we go for human safari there, and how the island is going through a phase of development which is endangering their life. And this last novel, The Legends of Tengsam. It's by our own Mamang Dai from Arunachal Pradesh. The kind of changes that are taking place. The people are modernizing themselves, but in the process of modernization, they are also destroying their culture and tradition. And she laments that. So how much progress and development do we want? We are talking about a sustainable society. We are talking about indigenous knowledge system. We are talking about protecting the tribal, but at the same time, we are making them vulnerable through modernity. They want modernity for themselves. They also want progress and development for themselves. And this is all happening through consent. That's all. Thank you.
ছাৰক আপোনাক লেপটপ লাগিব নেকি? Right. Thank you so much, sir, for your enriching words. You have literally given us new insights into this whole idea of transformation, transition, or I would also say transgression, since the time of Renaissance humanism and to our colonial times, post-colonial times. Now I call upon Dr. Sultan Ali Ahmed, sir, Associate Professor of Department of English, PH College, to share his views on this seminar.
Thank you, Rajlakshmi. Honorable keynote speaker of this seminar organized by the Society for Humanities and Social Sciences, respected Dr. Devabrat Datta sir, who is the president of the society, Dr. Dipmani Das, respected HOD of the English department, my other esteemed colleagues from the English department as well as from the departments of the arts faculty, and my dear students who are present here in the seminar. So we all have listened to the keynote speech delivered by Dr. Debojyoti Biswas with rapt attention, and his deliberation is really a significant contribution to this seminar. He has particularly spoken about colonialism, which is one of the epoch-making events in the journey of mankind. The topic of the seminar is contemplation on the epoch-making events in the journey of mankind. Okay, the journey of mankind had started from the beginning of the civilization. And when the civilization exactly began, we do not know. But we have some idea about the beginning of the civilization. And since then, mankind has started his journey, and today, the mankind has reached the present stage of development. And during this whole period, there were certain great events, certain landmark events, which are considered as epoch-making events. And one such epoch-making event is colonialism, on which Dr. Biswas has very meticulously discussed, very critically discussed, rather I should say. He has focused on various aspects of colonialism in relation with modernity. Okay, so in the journey of mankind, actually, I do not have much to say. After his wonderful speech, there is nothing left to speak on behalf of me. But as I have been given a job here, a role here, therefore I am taking just a few minutes for you. So in this journey of mankind, I have already said that there are many events which are epoch-making. Okay. So the first epoch-making event in our history of civilization was probably the knowledge of the fire, when mankind learned how to use fire. Because for many years, mankind did not know how to use fire. Okay. So when mankind knew the use of fire, it gave the mankind a kind of advantage over the other animals. Okay. To establish dominance over the other animals. And, it helped mankind in its progress, in its progress of civilization. The second important event was the knowledge of the use of wheel, when mankind knew how to use wheel. Okay. And this wheel gave the speed. Okay. So you can enumerate the events in that way. There was another important epoch-making event was the knowledge of the use of horse, when mankind learned to domesticate horse and use the horse. Okay, and horses played a very significant role in human history. The Aryans were the very powerful race. The Aryans could conquer a large part of the world because they knew the use of the horses. Okay, with the horses they could conquer many parts of the world. So there are certain things in that way in human history. Okay, the Renaissance is one important event. The Reformation is one important event. The Enlightenment is one such epoch-making event. Colonialism is one such important epoch-making event that happens in the modern period. And along with colonialism, the anti-colonial struggle, okay, that happened in all the colonized countries, not at equal level, but in most of the countries, there were anti-colonial struggles led by different leaders. And these anti-colonial struggles, they are also epoch-making event in human history. Okay, along with colonialism, another important element is imperialism and anti-imperialist struggle. Okay, these are epoch-making events, isn't it? So I am just giving a kind of general view on the topic. Okay, so you have gone very detailed into one particular aspect. I am just giving an overview of the main epoch-making events of the world. I would like to say just a few words about the role of the intellectuals in the making of history. The role of the intellectuals in the epoch-making events of the world. Okay, the role played by the intellectuals. Okay, as he has already pointed out, the roles of the intellectuals played in the, the roles played by the intellectuals, the writers in colonialism. Similarly, in the anti-colonial struggles also, there were the roles of the intellectuals, the roles of the writers. Many writers who developed anti-colonial ideas. Okay. And this role of the intellectuals were very important from the very ancient period. Okay. The first important intellectual, according to me, was Socrates in the world, in the Western world. First important intellectual in the world. And Socrates was living at a time when in ancient Greece, most of the people, they claimed that they were very knowledgeable people. The contemporaries of Socrates, they described them as sophists. Sophist means highly knowledgeable people. And Socrates simply said that he was not a sophist, he was a philosopher. Philosophy means, philo means love, Sophia means knowledge. He is a lover of knowledge. He does not claim that he has knowledge, but only one thing he can say, that he has a love for knowledge. And Socrates very famously declared that I know only one thing, that I know nothing. Okay. There is only one thing which I know for sure, is that I know nothing. My friends, the other people, they know a lot because they are sophists, but I do not claim that I am a sophist. I am rather a philosopher. I want to pursue knowledge. I know nothing. And Socrates, what did Socrates do? He raised certain questions about the established system, certain questions about the authority, certain questions against those who were in power. And that is why what has happened to him, his questions were very disturbing to those who were in power. That is why Socrates was punished. We all know about that. Socrates was forced to consume poison. Okay, he sacrificed his life. He did not surrender. He did not flee from his country, but he sacrificed his life for the sake of truth, for the sake of justice. But he left behind a handful of disciples, and among his disciples, the most prominent was Plato. And Plato's philosophy is the foundation of the Western philosophy. The famous modern philosopher, American philosopher A.N. Whitehead, he has said a very important thing, that the entire Western philosophy is nothing but a footnote on Plato. What Plato has said, all other philosophers who have come after Plato, they have merely supplemented what Plato has already said. Okay, so Plato, he constituted the foundation of the Western philosophy, and this Plato was a disciple of Socrates. So the development of Greek civilization, the development of Greek philosophy, and subsequently the development of Roman philosophy, all these were actually the contribution of Plato, and Plato was the disciple of Socrates. So Socrates' role in the foundation of the knowledge in the West, you cannot deny, and you must give the importance, the intellectual, as an intellectual, what role he played in the foundation of knowledge in the West. Similarly, I will give one more example, then I will conclude. I will give the example of Galileo, who is considered as the father of modern science. Okay, father of modern science, because Galileo also raised questions about the established scientific views which were dominant at that time. Okay, people were thinking that this was science, which was actually not really science. I'm not going into that in detail. Okay, people were believing certain things as science, but Galileo raised questions about the veracity of those things. Okay, and he not only raised questions, he tried to prove what he said with experiment. Okay, he took his, he was a professor of mathematics at the University of Pisa in Italy, and he took his other professors and the students to the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and from there he did some experiments, scientific experiments, and he demonstrated to his students that these are the truths. Okay, what you are reading in your textbook, that is not correct, but what I am showing you, that is correct. And that Galileo, what happened to him? His questions, his discovery, everything disturbed the established authority at that time. Okay, the government of Italy and as a whole, the European Christian world was not ready to accept what Galileo was saying. Galileo was saying that the earth moves around the sun, but it is written in a different way in the Bible. The Christian world was thinking something else. That is why Galileo he had to undergo suffering. He was under house arrest in the last 8 years of his life, and he died when he was in house arrest. So Galileo is an example of an intellectual who raised questions to the authority and who developed the foundation of modern science. If there were no Galileo, then there were no Newton. If there were no Newton, there were no Einstein. If there were no Einstein, then there were no other modern scientists which are actually giving us or contributing so much to the scientific world. Okay, so what my point is that, in this journey of mankind, certain prominent people have played very significant role, and they were the eminent thinkers, they were the intellectuals, they were the scientists. They played a very prominent role, and when they were trying to play this role, they faced a lot of resistance. They faced a lot of suffering in their life. They faced a lot of resistance to the established society, to the established authority, because their questions were disturbing to them. Because whenever you want to bring out something new, you will have to question. You will have to raise questions about the established rules or established, systems. You will have to raise questions, and only by raising questions you can bring about dramatic sense, the kind of sense that we call transformation. Okay, and it is the transformation or the big event which is actually taking us or taking the civilization forward. So with these few words, I'm concluding my speech. Thank you.
We now have come towards the end of our inaugural session. I call upon Titiksha Das to say the vote of thanks.
I take this opportunity to thank our Honorable Principal, Dr. Phukhar Chandra Pathak sir, for his kind cooperation and support in organizing the seminar. I express my heartfelt gratitude to our keynote Honorable Speaker, Dr. Debojyoti Biswas sir, for giving us an enlightening session. Sir has given critical on the aspects of transitions and insight transformation since modernism and colonialism, and the impact it has created in our society. And I'm sure that all of us would be benefited by his words of wisdom. Thank you, sir, for giving us your valuable time. I express my heartfelt gratitude to Dr. Sultan Ali Ahmed, sir, for sharing with us his views on epoch-making events of the world to us that has brought transformations in our society. I would like to convey my gratitude to IQAC coordinator Dr. Robinjyoti Khatamia sir for his advice, suggestion, encouragement and technical support. I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to all the advisors of organizing committee of the seminar, especially Dr. Devarpur Dutta sir, for making all the necessary arrangements required for lunch and breakfast. I take this opportunity to thank Chantamita Das, Assistant Professor of Department of Assamese of PH College, for giving us the pleasure of listening a soulful poet. I thank the reporters of our seminar, Munjali Katharpi and Vidisha Dwara ma'am, for their patience in taking note of every agenda of the seminar, and that this task would continue for all the upcoming technical sessions. Therefore, I thank them beforehand. I thank the coordinators of the seminar and I wish them good luck in successful execution of all the technical sessions. Finally, I thank all the participants who have joined us in the inaugural session of our two-day national seminar. Thank you so much.